Whether it's misleading posts about digital ID or whether it's cancelling elections, I will aim to be your alternative voice from the mainstream media and certainly from these politicians and telling you what I think about what they say. I will call it out, I'll tell you what I think, I'll try to be unbiased and I'll try to give you both sides of the picture. So please do subscribe because I've counted over 400, AI has counted over 400 of you who have said that you've subscribed to my channel and you've been unsubscribed without any action on your part. Now, I've raised this to the technical teams at YouTube because I think that's frankly unfair on me, it's unfair on you. I do wonder why that is, because it's entirely implausible that it is you that is doing it by accident. Certainly the hundreds of you that have complained that you've been unsubscribed without any action on your part. So I will keep you informed. Please do subscribe and combat this for me. But let's get into today's stories. Now, this one here has been doing the rounds because Keir Starmer says, well, in a roundabout way, he's saying that you will have to pay £85 if you don't want to use digital ID. I'll tell you where this came from, and I'll tell you why it's nonsense. Well, he did say it. That bit's not nonsense. But the fact that he's claiming that you'd have to pay £85 is nonsense, and I'll tell you why. Listen to this.
You can still use your passport or your birth certificate or your 3 bank accounts if you want, however many times. You can choose to pay £85 to a company to prove that you are who you are every time you need to. Or you can take the easy route, which is get digital ID.
So Keir Starmer claims digital ID is the easy route.
So let's take a look at where this came from. Did it just magic out of thin air, or is there a genuine story behind it? Now, if you listen to Keir Starmer, there's a genuine story behind it, because he says in this post here, I recently spoke with someone buying a house with her partner. She told me that she just had to pay to verify who she was. With digital ID, that could have been done in seconds and wipe out the costs. Now, presumably, that might be where this £85 comes from. Now, let me just step aside for a moment. Whenever you buy a house and do things like that, you are required to prove who you are. That is usually easy if you've got a passport or a driving license or a combination of those and utility bills and things like that. There's various other forms of ID that they accept. They have done for decades. They also will very often, unless it's absolutely obvious, like with the same bank and so on, need to prove the source of funds. Now, obviously, if the money was within your own bank account and you're taking a mortgage with the bank that you bank with and that's where the deposit's coming from and stuff, then that's not a problem. But if it's coming from somewhere else, they might need to verify the source of funds. They need to do this for anti-money laundering checks, along with verifying who you are, which is a bit like why they will no longer usually take large wads of cash when you go into a car dealership for the same sort of reason. They need to verify the source of funds. Now, this is entirely normal. Now, some firms will charge a fee for doing it. Some do it for free. Some will charge, £10, £15. It's just dropped there on the bill along with the legal fees. And there are various others. Just as another case in point, I saw a post, I think this morning, that said you must have a solicitor to buy or sell a house, which is not true. You can use a licensed conveyancer. Interesting point of fact, it's one of the few things that barristers are not allowed to do. Because we would have to get a separate license to do conveyancing. We're not automatically allowed to do conveyancing. We're not automatically allowed to do litigation either. I am authorised to do litigation, which is the stuff that solicitors usually do, which is filing claims and applications and other things at court. I'm allowed to do that, and that's one thing that we can do with that extension. But we're not allowed to do conveyancing, but you can have a conveyancer, not just a solicitor, but they will still have to do identity checks and money laundering checks. And this will be the same regardless of whether you've got digital ID. They'll still have to do the source of funds check. So I suspect that they'll just roll this up, in most instances, into the same fee. Now, I've bought and sold a lot of properties in my time, and I can tell you I've never really thought about the identity and the money laundering checks as being a problem. I've just proved who I am, proved where the money came from, and that's never been a problem. And I suspect the same is true for the vast, vast majority of people. But dealing with Keir Starmer's claim here, and I will play it for you. I will play exactly what he said. Once again, he said that it was £85 whenever you need to do it. Listen to the wording. And it's somehow it's subtle, but it is also weaving this into your head, trying to get you to believe it, or at least anyone that hears him believe it. Listen again very closely.
You can choose to pay £85 to a company to prove that you are who you are every time you need to.
You can choose to pay £85 to a company to prove who you are every time you need to. This is patently false. You can go to a solicitor and get documents verified with your passport for vastly less than that. And I would suggest that if they are charging you £85, they are overcharging you, because the vast majority of firms will simply not be charging you £85. So I think that is flat out misleading. And I think it's worse than that, because when we look at other posts like this, he says here, digital ID will be a huge help in tackling illegal immigration. How? I really don't see it. They either come through the airport, in which case they should have the correct documents, or they're coming in on a boat, in which case they don't have any documents, and digital ID is not really going to make a huge amount of difference. Now, David Lammy seems to chalk it up as a massive success that we detected one guy coming back on a boat having been sent back to France, not realizing the irony that it's clearly not a success in getting rid of people if they just come back again. So if we've detected one, how many more will come back that we don't detect? Because I guarantee you they won't detect them all. So this, I just really don't buy this argument that it's going to be a huge help in tackling illegal immigration. And then he said, but it's much more than that. It will empower people every single day, giving you new ways to prove who you are. Now, the vast majority of people don't need a new way to prove who you are. They don't need to save any time and money and everything else by doing this. One thing that does concern me is that if they roll out the only viable alternative to a digital ID to say that it has to be from one of these verified companies, and then open the door to them charging you £85. So on the one hand, they will say this one is free, but then you get plugged into this system, and I have huge reservations about it. Or the alternative is you have to pay one of these companies for what presumably would be a mandatory £85 fee to verify your identity if it's done outside of digital ID. That's my concern, that instead of just giving you a free option, they give you a free option, but otherwise mandate that you pay £85. And therefore, it is not saving you money. It is forcing you into the system in one way or making you pay for it another, which on the whole is going to cost a lot of people money, because there will be a lot of people that just don't want digital ID. They won't sign up for it, regardless it's free, and they would probably choose to pay £85 than have a digital ID controlled by this government. That is just my view. Let me know in the comments what you think. But moving on, there are also claims that they are now cancelling local elections, by-elections for local seats. Now, what is all this about? Now, Angela Rayner had this big plan of devolution, which means they are moving certain powers from main government to local government, and they are combining certain local authorities into a unitary authority, so a larger authority dealing with wider areas, which I think itself has problems, because if some of them can't manage themselves financially as it is, what chance do they have if they're managing much larger areas? But that's a separate concern. So in essence, what they appear to be saying is there's no point in doing these local elections if they'll need to be done again if the local authority becomes part of a unitary authority. And it's much more than just a hint. In fact, he refused to rule this out. So in Prime Minister's questions, the question came, can the Prime Minister give me a cast iron guarantee that my constituents in Woking and others across the country will not lose their democratic right to vote? He replied, I thank him for the question, and he knows we inherited a situation where local councils were underfunded and millions were wasted on duplication. By reforming the system, we will save money and reinvest it into improved public services. In Surrey, just in response to his question, we expect the elections to be in a new unitary councils and will be setting out the planned timetables very shortly. In other words, they are denying people of their democratic right to vote. Even if it's going to be a duplicitous vote, I think they should still hold it, because that will at least assure people that they have that democratic right to vote, and they can vote, they can make their voices heard. And instead, it says the government's pushing through this wholesale restructuring of local authorities, pushing them into unitary authorities, and so on. And personally, I think it's because they know that certain councillors are going to lose their seats in those areas, so they're going to delay it as much as possible. So I'm not sort of jumping on the reform bandwagon here in any stretch. I'm just telling you that is what I think. It very much seems to me that they are doing that because they know that they will get results they don't want. That's just how it seems to me, but I'm somewhat cynical. That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. There's much more to cover, but I'll probably do those on my Off the Record channel, which I'll link below, my money channel, which I'll link below, and a little bit probably will come on secrets. So join me over there and I'll see you next time.